just add my voice then as a person who was standing right here, which is, as you can see, 8 seats away from where...
As the member's adding her voice, I want to make sure that it is additional information and not a repeat of what has already been said. The honourable member for Lakeland.
I guess if I'm allowed to speak and continue, I'll try to do that. The unique thing would be about my perspective, given that I was standing right here, 8 seats away from where the incident happened. It is categorically false that there were hundreds of Conservative MPs here at that time. That's just not true. Second of all, I was standing right here when the member stormed all the way down here. The poor guy holding this thing, Mace, didn't really know what to do. He's standing there like, what's going on? I watched her this many feet away storm all the way down here in very confrontational, aggressive comportment, and I certainly wouldn't be one, to lecture others about decorum when I'm in the course of doing my job as a member of Parliament, standing in my place as an advocate for my constituents. But that is certainly that is certainly a major distinction from storming physically all the way down here, an elevated voice to the Speaker and to all of the pages and everyone all around them. More and more Conservative MPs left the chamber while that was happening. There were Conservatives at the very back who had said, what's going on here? This is adjourned. Let's go. Let's get done. Then they did make accusatory and false accusations of our deputy leader. And then the member for Leeds, Thousand Islands, came over here and sat 8 seats away from me, right there. And I was in his own seat, and I was standing right here. And then at that point, she did come back across here and was joined by at least 3 members from over there who rushed over the table to my male colleague who was sitting down, who walked up and sat down. And then they stood over him aggressively, physically, over the front of the desk with their voices raised, pointing down at him. You can hear me in the video footage that has gone around saying, he's sitting down, he's sitting down. Well, no one in their right mind and seeing eyeballs can actually make the argument that the person who was being a bully and intimidating another was the person sitting in his seat with 3 or 4 others standing over top of him with their voices elevated, pointing down, yelling at like that. There's just no one in their right mind, which is also in video footage, that could be concluded or perceived to be anything other than the members of Parliament who are on their feet, physically and verbally bending over and intimidating the member sitting in his seat. And that is backed up by the comments of the member for Kelowna Lake Country, who sits right beside that member. She, like me, and like, I can't remember the person, this isn't her actual last name, but Ferrari, I can't remember the name of her thing. Hopefully that's okay, because I'm not saying her actual name. Can't remember her riding name.
Mention the first name or the last name, you're not allowed to say that name. Yes, you did.
It's a different last name.
Peterborough.
Peterborough. So the member for Peterborough, just as she said, I too have had professional jobs, many professional jobs before I was elected to this place almost a decade ago. And somewhat like the first incident where we all pretended the Prime Minister didn't do what he did, in, I don't know, our first or second year of being elected here, when he stormed down to that end because he was mad the length the vote was taking, and then our whip, Gord Brown, got frog marched by him down here, but was too much of a gracious man to say anything.
Going into some past information, again, the honourable member, if she has anything else to add, because a lot of what she's indicated has already been raised, and the Speaker was here, so he saw what was going on. He experienced it, and I'm sure that he'll be able to provide more context, and we have lots of videos. So again, if the honourable member can wrap it up, the honourable member Lakeland.
Madam Speaker, and what I dearly hope is that we don't run into a situation where he experienced it differently and we all pretend that what we can't see with our functional brains and our seeing eyeballs is the opposite of what happened. So, like the other member from Peterborough, and like the member for Kelowna Lake Country, now these are all tough women. None of us are shrinking violets. Many of us have gone through challenging things in our lives, which actually does include being in unsafe environments and sometimes physically and verbally intimidating situations. I can speak for myself in that regard. It makes me allergic to bullies as an adult. But I would share the comments that they made, that never in my life have I been in a workplace where that kind of thing could happen and where there are no consequences. So, Madam Speaker, I really am looking to hear from what are the consequences for members behaving in a way which is blindingly, obviously, physically and verbally intimidating in a workplace. And also, might I just conclude by saying, this place is one of vigorous debate. It is one where we have a duty to represent our constituents on the most important policy and political decisions that impact every day of their lives. These debates will get hot. These votes will be controversial. There'll be lots of back and forth between all of us. That is the heat of the political frying pan that we all volunteer to jump in. If people can't take it, they should probably get out of it. But I hope that there will be
is really going on to the debate side, and again, the information that has been provided has been already submitted. I appreciate all of the additional input that people have indicated, but for the most part, a lot of this borders is debate. And as I said, the Speaker was here. We've got lots of video to go through, and I'm sure that a decision is forthcoming. The House will now resume with the remaining business under routine proceedings. A point of order, the honourable member again for Lakeland.
Thank you. So the new thing is, though, of course, my very close and direct perspective on everything, so therefore my unique perspective. But the new thing I'm really asking for is what will be the consequences? Well,
so hopefully see that based on the decision that will be rendered. And as we have just witnessed as well, members do get a little hot under the collar sometimes, and sometimes they do things that they may regret later, or you know, that is not acceptable in the House. So I would just ask members to please be respectful of each other. And now we are under the rubric of motions. Motions. Presenting petitions. Présentation de pétitions. The honourable member for Provencher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I have two petitions to present today. The first is from residents living here in Canada, and they say that the Falun Gong is a traditional Chinese spiritual discipline which consists of meditation, exercise, and moral teachings based on the principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance. And in July 1999, the Chinese Communist Party launched an intensive nationwide persecution campaign to eradicate Falun Gong. Hundreds of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners have been detained in forced labor camps, brainwashing centers, and prisons where torture and abuse are routine, and thousands have died as a result. Canadian lawyer David Madison, former Canadian Secretary of State for the Asia-Pacific David Kilgore, conducted an investigation in 2006, concluded that the Chinese regime and its agencies throughout China have put to death a large number, in tens of thousands, of Falun Gong practitioners of conscience. Their vital organs were seized involuntarily for the sale at high price. The Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting has gotten about 1.5 million petition signatures from over 50 countries and presented to United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, calling for the immediate action to end the unethical practice of forced organ harvesting in China, calls for an end of the persecution of the Falun Gong. The European Parliament passed a resolution condemning the organ harvesting abuses in China and calls on the government of China to end immediately the practice of harvesting organs from prisoners of conscience. Therefore, the undersigned, the petitioners, request the Canadian Parliament and government to pass a resolution to establish measures to stop the Chinese Communist regime's crime of systematically murdering Falun Gong practitioners for their organs, amend Canadian legislation to combat forced organ harvesting, and publicly call for an end to the persecution of Falun Gong in China. I also have a petition here, Madam Speaker. It's not quite as lengthy as the last one, but it's asking, or it's indicating, first of all, that Louis Roy of the Quebec College of Physicians recommended expanding euthanasia to babies from birth to 1 year of age who come into the world with severe deformities and very serious syndromes. This proposal for the legalized killing of infants is deeply disturbing to many Canadians, and infanticide is always wrong. We, the undersigned citizens, residents of Canada, call on the Government of Canada to block any attempt to allow the killing of children. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I just want to remind members to summarize the petitions as opposed to reading exactly what the petition says. The honourable member for Brampton South.
Madam Speaker, I'm tabling the petition on behalf of over 27,000 Canadians who are calling for tax relief for those living with celiac disease.
For a minute, the honourable member's phone must be on her desk because it's vibrating, and that's not a good thing. No, not even on that desk, because it also the light will come on. So if she could put it on the chair, and the next time maybe she could also make sure that it's not on vibrate. The honourable member for Brampton South.
Madam Speaker, I'm tabling a petition on behalf of over 27,000 Canadians who are calling for tax relief for those living with celiac disease. Celiac affects 1 in every 100 Canadians, forcing them to live on a gluten-free diet that can be very expensive. The present medical exemption tax credit requires applicants to provide a receipt, making it overly burdensome. Only 1 in 5 Canadians living with celiac have claimed it. The petitioners therefore call for the creation of an annual $1,000 refundable tax credit for Canadians with celiac disease. I want to thank Celiac Canada and everyone who signed this petition. As a founding member of All-Party Celiac Caucus, I'm proud to present it to the House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Presenting petitions, the honourable for St. Albert Edmonton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to present a petition. Petitioners call on the government and the Minister of Finance to scrap plans to increase the capital gains inclusion rate to 66.6% so that Canadian businesses are not put at an unfair disadvantage. Petitioners note that increasing the capital gains inclusion rate will put Canada and Canadian business at a disadvantage. It is estimated that 1 in 5 Canadian businesses will be impacted by this change over the next decade. And finally, the petitioners note that a rise in capital gains taxes would strain healthcare resources, limit access to affordable housing options, exacerbate financial challenges for farmers, and compromise retirement savings for Canadians.
Presenting petitions, the honourable member for Dauphin Swan River Nipawin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always an honour to present a petition on behalf of constituents. Madam Speaker, I rise for the 57th time on behalf of the people of Swan River, Manitoba, to present a petition on the rising rate of crime. The community of Swan River is struggling with the rising rate of crime in their area. Statistics Canada reports that after 9 years of this Liberal government, violent crime has risen 50%, and gang-related homicides have nearly doubled. Within the last 5 years, the crime severity index in Swan River has increased by over 50%. Over 18 months, 4 individuals in Swan River were responsible for 309 total offences, 53 which were violent offences. This is why the people of Swan River are demanding jail and not bail for violent repeat offenders. Madam Speaker, the people of Swan River demand that this Liberal government repeal their soft on crime policies that directly threaten their livelihoods and their community. And I support the good people of Swan River.
Good for you. You're their man.
Presenting petitions, the honourable for Peace River West Loch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 petitions to present today. The first petition is on behalf of many Canadians who are concerned about the human rights protections in India. The petitioner is saying that, according to the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, that various actors are supporting and enforcing sectarian policies seeking to establish India as a Hindu state. The petitioners state that Christians in India are being targeted by extremists that are vandalizing their churches, attacking church workers, and threatening or humiliating their congregations. The petitioners also state that crimes against the Dalit groups, including Dalit women and girls, are increasing. The petitioners say that the Indian Muslims are at risk of genocide, assault, and sexual violence. The petitioners are asking that the Canadian government ensure that all trade deals with India are premised on mandatory human rights provisions and that extremists be sanctioned, and that the government promote a respectful dialogue between Canada and India. The next petition I have to present, Madam Chair, is from Canadians from across the country who are concerned about human rights protections in Turkey, Pakistan, and Bahrain. The petitioners say that Turkish, Palestinian, or Pakistani and Bahraini officials have committed gross human rights violations against thousands of Turks, including 8 Turkish Canadians. The petitioners state that the Turkish officials have killed hundreds, including Golan Aliku. The petitioners state that Turkish officials have wrongfully detained over 300,000 people without reason. The petitioners state that multiple human rights organizations have confirmed the gross human rights violations in Turkey. The petitioners are asking that the Government of Canada closely monitor these human rights violations in Turkey and sanction Turkish officials who have committed gross human rights violations against 8 Canadians. And they call on the Turkey, Pakistani and Bahraini governments to end all human rights violations in their respective country. The last petition I have to present today, Madam Chair, is from Canadians across the country who want to draw to the attention to the House of Commons around the forced organ harvesting and the persecution of Falun Gong. Hundreds of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners have been detained in forced labor camps, brainwashing centers, and prison where torture abuse are routine and thousands have died. They also want to call to the attention of this House of the work of the late David Kilgar, that he conducted an investigation in 2006 that concluded that the Chinese regime and its agencies throughout China have put to death a large number of Falun Gong practitioners of conscience and that their vital organs were seized involuntarily for sale at a high price. They note that 1.5 million people have signed petitions from over 50 countries and presented it to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, calling for immediate action to end the unethical practice of forced organ harvesting in China and the end to the persecution of Falun Gong. As such, they asked for the Government of Canada to pass a resolution establishing measures to stop the systematic murdering of Falun Gong practitioners for their organs and to amend Canadian legislation to combat forced organs harvesting and to publicly call for the end of the persecution of the Falun Gong in China. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Petitions. Présentation de pétition. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleague from Peace River had so many petitions, I was afraid I wouldn't get a chance, but here we go, Madam Speaker. I do have a few petitions to present to the House today. The first raises concern about this government's extreme euthanasia agenda, already the most liberal regime in the world, and we see continuing proposals for further radical expansion, including this one that draws the ire of the petitioners, a proposal to expand euthanasia to include, quote, babies from birth to 1 year of age. This proposal was made by Louis Roy of the Quebec College of Physicians before a parliamentary committee. This proposal for the legalized killing of infants is deeply disturbing to many Canadians who believe that it is always wrong to kill or wish the death of a child. Petitioners call on the House to block any attempt to legalize the killing of children in Canada. The next petition is regarding human rights in Russia. Some aspects of this petition are a little bit dated, but it does raise concern about the serious domestic repression inside of Russia, including violence and other measures targeting those who are advocating for freedom and democracy within Russia. And we have seen, while Russia has been invading Ukraine, a escalating repression of democracy activists inside of Russia. Petitioners want the House to stand with the people of Russia by working with allies to pressure the Russian government to uphold democratic and human rights norms. They want to see additional Magnitsky-style sanctions imposed against those who are undermining democracy and human rights in Russia. The next petition that I'm tabling is in support of Bill S-210, a bill that seeks to bring about meaningful age verification for those accessing sexually explicit material online. Bill S-210 had the unanimous support of the Senate and the support of a majority of this House at second reading. Petitioners note that a significant portion of the sexually explicit material accessed online is not protected by any effective age verification method. and the average age of first exposure to pornography is very, very young. It's in fact 11 or 12 years of age. So many young children are consuming this material who should not be. In fact, exposing children to sexual material is a form of child abuse. Petitioners also note that there is a great deal of research on harms associated with this early exposure, including, quote, reinforcement of gender stereotypes, the development of attitudes favorable to harassment and violence, including sexual harassment and violence, particularly towards women. Petitioners also say that online age verification technology is increasingly sophisticated and can effectively ascertain the age of users without breaching their privacy rights in any way. Therefore, petitioners call on the House to pass Bill S-210, Protecting Young Persons from Exposure to Pornography Act. The next petition highlights the horrific ongoing persecution of Falun Gong practitioners in the People's Republic of China. Falun Gong practitioners are those who practice a spiritual discipline that emphasizes meditation and moral teachings based on the virtues of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Yet they have faced horrific, violent repression by the government, and that repression goes back 25 years, and that repression includes forced organ harvesting. Petitioners want to see the House do more to combat the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners. And I suspect this will be my final petition because of time. This petition draws the attention of the House to human rights abuses in Eritrea, as well as actions of the Eritrean government that constitute foreign interference. Eritrea has been called the North Korea of Africa. There is a complete lack of basic political freedoms, and many have gone into exile. And yet many of those who have gone into exile continue to face various forms of foreign interference, and their family members may be targeted with extortion as a result of the fact that members of their family have gone into exile. And petitioners also note that Eritrea's government is an ally of Vladimir Putin. So petitioners want to see the government engage Eritrean political and human rights activists and pro-democracy groups take a leadership role against Eritrea's human rights abuses and foreign interference activities, to enforce Canada's asylum laws, that is to prevent those that are associated with hostile regimes from being able to come to Canada. And petitioners also want to see strengthened sanctions against human rights abusers, and they're advocating for the release of various imprisoned parliamentarians and journalists in Eritrea. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions on the order paper? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you. Madam Speaker, I would ask that all questions be allowed to stand, please.
Agreed, and so ordered. Orders of the day, ordre du jour.
Privilege, in the name of Mr. Scheer, motion regarding the failure to produce documents pertaining to Sustainable Development Technology Canada, resuming debate on the sub-amendment of Mr. Kelly.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for St. Albert Edmonton had... Oh yeah, we were down to questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. What we have is a continuation of a multi-million-dollar game. And that's really what this is all about. And it's quite unfortunate because, Madam Speaker, the people that are paying the cost of this is Canadians in all regions of the country. Why? Because we have a leader of the Conservative Party of Canada that is more interested in himself than he is in Canadians, Madam Speaker, at a substantial cost. For weeks now, the Conservatives have been playing this game, denying the opportunity to have all forms of other debates, whether it's government legislation or private members' issues, Madam Speaker. My question to the member opposite is, when is he going to give his leader a shake and ask the leader to behave in a more responsible way, because quite frankly he is in borderline contempt of Parliament, Madam Speaker, and the leader needs to smarten up and do the honourable thing and allow the legislature to continue to do the work for Canadians, not for the Conservative Party of Canada.
The honourable member for St. Albert Edmonton.
Well, Madam Speaker, I would observe that it is this government, these Liberals, that are holding up the work of Parliament, because it is these Liberals that are defying a clear and unambiguous order of this House to turn over all documents related to the Liberal billion-dollar Green Slush Fund to the parliamentary law clerk, who in turn can turn those documents over to the RCMP. It is these Liberals that are hiding and obstructing that order in the face of one of the largest corruption scandals in modern Canadian history. And Conservatives will continue to insist that those documents be turned over, and it's up to the government if they want to continue this. We'll continue to hold up debate until that happens.
Comments? The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Radio Canada reported yesterday that on the ongoing interference in the Conservative leadership race by the Modi government, the member for Calgary Nose Hill was approached by agents of the Indian government to step down from the Patrick Brown campaign. So we don't know whether a deal was cut or she was intimidated, but we do know now that there's a number of names that have been identified by CSIS who were involved in allowing the member who lives in Stornoway to take the leadership through now serious allegations of interference by a foreign government. I'm asking the member why the member who lives in Stornoway refuses to get security clearance and why he refuses to name the names. And will that member tell us if the member from Calgary Nose Hill is one of those who've been identified by CSIS as being compromised by foreign government interference?
So the questions that are being posed, I'm not sure that they're actually related to the question of privilege, but I see that the honourable member was standing up, so I don't know if he wants to respond. But I would ask members to please direct their questions regarding the question, or at least link it to the question of privilege. The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has been very clear. He has called on the Prime Minister to release the names of all MPs who have wittingly collaborated with foreign hostile states. The Prime Minister refuses to release the names. With respect to a security clearance, the Leader of the Opposition has also been clear. He will take the same briefings that this government provided the Washington Post. He'll take the same briefings that the Prime Minister receives, but what he won't do is allow the Prime Minister to pick and choose which pieces of information the Leader of the Opposition is presented with and which other information might be withheld, and then allow the Prime Minister to be the arbiter of whether he violated his oath of secrecy or not.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the comments, and I know the excellent speech that my colleague from St. Albert gave when this was debated yesterday. But my question is in particular. This Prime Minister has normalized constitutional crises. We are in unprecedented territory here. The fact that that Prime Minister and those Liberals supported by the NDP refused to abide by an order that was given to the government from Parliament. This is unprecedented territory, the longest privileged debate that has taken place in parliamentary history. And here we are, with that Prime Minister normalizing a crisis of what, in our system of governance, is meant to be Parliament's unfettered access to documents. I'm wondering if my colleague could expand a little bit on how unprecedented it truly is that they refuse to release the documents.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, my colleague from Battle River Crowfoot is entirely right. This is unprecedented, and it's unprecedented because of the degree to which and the lengths that this government will go to obstruct a clear and unambiguous order of this House for the government to turn over the documents. But this is part of a pattern, as the member, I think, alluded to, because there have been other bad precedents set by this government, also in the context of defying the will of Parliament. This is a Prime Minister who went so far as to take the Speaker of the House of Commons to court to try to hide documents that Parliament and the Speaker had ordered with respect to the major national security breach at the Winnipeg lab. So yes, this is all the more reason, I would say, why Thursday's Opposition Day motion can't come soon enough, and why we need to vote non-confidence in this government and get on with it with the carbon tax election.
There's the honourable member still has just a little under 4 minutes, so the next time that this matters before the House. Déclaration de députés, statements by members. L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. Thank you, Madam Speaker. He who does not know where he comes from. I'll start again, Madam Speaker. I was second on the list, not first, so I was surprised. He who rises has the floor. The honourable member, Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. Thank you, Madam Speaker. He who does not know where he comes from cannot know where he is going. In Portneuf, Jacques Cartier, history is rich and many historical societies make sure to keep it alive. We are currently preparing an annual calendar highlighting 12 historical events in the riding. We've been able to count on many people's collaborations. I'd like to thank these historical societies for their contribution. Thank you to the presidents and their teams. Michel Bertrand, Cap-Santé, Louise Mercier des Chambeaux-Grondines, André Parent from Neuville, Jacques Mat from Pont-Rouge, Pierre Gignac from Portneuf, Bertrand Junot from Saint-Augustin, Pierre Quentin from Saint-Basile de Portneuf, Michel Tessier from Saint-Casimir, Alan Dawson from Saint-Brigitte-de-Laval, Joanne Boucher from Sainte-Catherine de la Jacques-Cartier, Sylvain Gingras from Saint-Raymond, Mike Noonan from Shannon, Réal Dufour from Stoneham and Tewkesbury, Davy Chacour from Valcartier. Thank you for keeping our history alive, and happy holidays to all.
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Madam Speaker, today, December 3rd, we celebrate Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday is a global generosity movement for giving and volunteering. It's a day when charities, companies, community leaders, and residents join together to support their favorite cause by fundraising, donating, volunteering, and spreading the word. This Giving Tuesday across Canada, and including in my hometown of Mississauga, volunteers and donors are helping organizations like the Mississauga Food Bank to make sure there's food on every table, or the Luso-Canadian Charitable Society to make a difference in the lives of individuals living with disabilities. Amongst many other great causes, I encourage everyone to join millions of Canadians this Giving Tuesday as we unite to make a difference. Today and every day, let's celebrate Canadian organizations, communities across Canada, including Canada Helps, that founded Giving Tuesday in 2013 in Canada, along with several other founding partners. Thank you.
The honourable member for Laurentides-Labelle. On the 15th of May, during a national meeting on sustainable tourism, many experts raised a warning. A lack of snow might plunge winter tourism into an unprecedented crisis. This Saturday, this threat became real. The International Federation of Skiing has cancelled the women's downhill ski competition because there wasn't enough snow. This event, which is essential for the Laurentide economy, won't happen this year because of climate change. Despite exemplary efforts from the station and the resort, this cancellation shows that climate change is shaking our economy and our regions to the core. Yet the federal government remains an absolute dunce in the face of this global challenge. The ministers for the environment, for the economy and for tourism are Quebecers. They know how important winter tourism is to the Quebec economy. When will they finally act for us? The honourable member for Saint-Léonard and Saint-Michel.
On December 7th, we will celebrate the 80th anniversary of the signing of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, a landmark agreement that has shaped global vision and aviation. This historic treaty laid the foundation for the development of a safe, efficient, and interconnected air transport network that has brought nations closer together in the spirit of cooperation and nurtured the growth of international travel and trade for the past 8 decades.
At the heart of the convention is the International Civil Aviation Organization, a specialized agency of the United Nations which coordinates global air navigation standards, promoting safety and ensuring the development of air transport.
ICAO plays a key role in fostering international cooperation and advancing the principles that keep our skies safe and accessible for everyone.
On this 80th anniversary, we celebrate not only the global impact of the convention, but also Montreal's ongoing contribution to the advancement of international civil aviation.
The honourable member from Lambton, Middlesex, Kent.
Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. Mr. Speaker, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every person in my home riding of Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. It has been an honour of a lifetime to be your Member of Parliament for these past 5 years. I also want to thank each and every one of you for your incredible support and dedication in helping me to achieve this dream. In the time I've travelled countless miles and enjoyed working alongside such talented and committed individuals who have continuously inspired me and strengthened our shared goals. It has been a privilege to listen and bring feedback and build relationships throughout our many valued communities. I will still be your Member of Parliament until we can finally put an end to the incompetence and corruption of this NDP Liberal government. Please know that I carry forward the invaluable memories and experiences we've shared. Thank you for everything. I look forward to earning the ability to continue to represent many of you in the new riding of Middlesex, London following the next election. Thank you.
The honourable member for Whitby.
Mr. Speaker, last week I was thrilled to welcome over 700 changemakers from across Canada and around the world to the 3rd Annual Sustainable Finance Forum in Ottawa. Innovators, industry leaders, investors, academics, and nonprofits spoke on building a clean and prosperous economy for the 21st century. We shared innovative strategies to align our financial system with sustainability goals, discussed the remaining barriers, and explored how we can foster an inclusive and just economy for all. Finance plays an integral role in addressing climate change, social inequality, economic resilience, and some of the greatest challenges of our time. Competing globally for capital investment, creating good-paying jobs, and enhancing productivity remain key to Canada's economic success and resilience. I look forward to building on this year's momentum and working towards shaping federal policy that aligns with these goals. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Together, we're bending that arc."
The honourable member for Longueuil-Charlemagne. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to rise today to wish to the representatives of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs welcome. They are here in Ottawa to highlight the key issues of concern to the country's fire services.
A record number of Canadian fire chiefs, 46 of them from across the country, are on the Hill to meet with parliamentarians about some of the main issues facing Canada's fire services, involving equipment renewal, housing development, electric vehicles, and explosives. The Chiefs will also be sharing the results of the 2024 Great Canadian Fire Census, an invaluable tool that gives legislators and policymakers a snapshot of the current state of the fire and emergency sector in Canada. I urge all members of this House and the other place to avail themselves of this important opportunity to hear directly from these key representatives of Canada's 3,200 fire departments. I also invite everyone to join me tonight at the Fire Chiefs reception to show our support and, of course, to enjoy a little early holiday cheer. Thank you. Merci.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
I have shoulder-length blonde hair, a royal blue blazer, and a black blouse. Today, we recognize International Day of Persons with Disabilities. 27% of Canadians have one or more disability that impact their daily lives, causing many to face significant disadvantages. The rising cost of living crisis in Canada has disproportionately affected many persons with disabilities, with 1 in 6 people with disabilities living in poverty in 2022. 72% of persons with disabilities in Canada reported experiencing barriers to accessibility in their daily lives. Canada must do better to work towards a barrier-free country. Let's recognize the contributions of persons with disabilities in our communities and to Canada, as well as recognize the many advocates and those who support and help care for persons with disabilities, who are the voices of some of the most vulnerable Canadians.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dallard.
Monsieur le Président, International Day of Persons with Disabilities. This year's UN theme is amplifying the leadership of persons with disabilities for an inclusive and sustainable future.
We remain strongly committed to achieving the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
Persons with disabilities play key roles in creating accessible and inclusive communities and workplaces.
We need to ensure that their leadership and contributions are recognized and appreciated.
Principle, nothing without us, we are taking concrete action to implement the Canada Disability Benefit. We are ensuring that Canadians with disabilities have the support and opportunities they deserve. I want to thank all the advocates working within the disability community to making the disability benefit a reality. Happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Merci.
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. As Christmas approaches, a sad reality is taking hold of Quebec. Nearly 1 in 4 Quebecers expect to have to tighten their belts for holiday meals. Food inflation is hitting hard, and many are having to choose between food or housing. And yet, the Bloc Québécois voted in favour of $500 billion in inflationary Liberal spending. The result, Mr. Speaker? Food aid, once a temporary measure, has now become a permanent necessity under this Prime Minister. Instead of standing up to families, the Bloc Québécois is helping this out-of-touch government stay in power and continue its excesses. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers deserve better. With the Conservatives, they'll have a government that lowers taxes, fights inflation, and puts money back in families' pockets.
The honourable member for Niagara West.
It was the Liberal Minister of Public Safety that said that bolstering the power of the CBSA to secure our borders is, quote, not a priority. He said this despite U.S. threats of 25% tariffs, which, if put in place, will kill Canadian jobs and crush our economy. Last week, in just 4 days and on 3 separate occasions, 16 people crossed from Quebec into the U.S. illegally. 6 of them were pursued by authorities in a high-speed chase, putting many lives at risk. In addition, we have as many as 500,000 people who are in Canada illegally, 260,000 unprocessed refugee claims, over 3 million temporary residents who the Liberals expect to leave voluntarily. It's astonishingly incompetent, and it creates chaos and a total loss of control at our border. But help is on the way, Mr. Speaker. Conservatives have a plan to fix this Liberal disorder at the border. Conservatives will put Canada first and ensure we secure our border to protect our security and our economy. Call the election once and for all so we can get to work. Hear, hear.
Order, please. The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all know that foreign interference is a very serious issue. We can talk about murder, we can talk about extortion, we can talk about political interference. And yesterday we find out that we actually have a member of Parliament in the Conservative Party who has, in fact, been in touch with, either directly or indirectly, with foreign interference related to the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. That's the same leadership in which the current leader was elected, Mr. Speaker. Is there any question why, for weeks, I've been asking and challenging the leader of the official opposition to get the security clearance, and he continues to hide? I've been saying he has something that's in his past that he doesn't want Canadians to know. And Mr. Speaker, this is not just it. There's more to it. But what we do know is his leadership is a fraud, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker. We need to have a foreign interference investigation.
Hey, make him withdraw that. He just called someone a fraud. That's unparliamentary, Greg. Come on.
Order. Order.
on, Greg. Make him withdraw that.
Order. Order. Colleagues. Colleagues. Okay.
Are you just gonna stand there, Greg? You like the camera on you? Or are you gonna do something?
Order. The honourable member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
December 3rd
What?
is International Day of Persons with Disabilities.
Didn't make him withdraw.
The honourable member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
December 3rd is International Day of Persons with Disabilities. The theme for this year is amplifying disability leadership. In my community, there are so many outstanding organizations like Kinsight, Share, Special Olympics, and Community Living BC who do that work every day. This day also opens up an opportunity for this Liberal government to recommit to their obligations under Article 28 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities by fixing the inadequate and inaccessible Canada Disability Benefit.
Yep.
They must increase the amount of the benefit and remove the inaccessible disability tax credit.
Yes.
I have another solution for them too. Yesterday, I introduced a bill that would protect the CDB from clawbacks to end the injustice people with disabilities face under the current household income testing system. The Liberals need to act on my bill immediately and protect the Canada Disability Benefit from their cruel and callous clawbacks.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Thérèse de Blainville.
All right, Pierre's in the House. Trudeau just
On this
sat down.
International Day for People Living with Disabilities, I'd like to commend 3 organisations here on the Hill today: Capfish, Copan and ASEC. They are here to demand concrete action from the government. It's been 18 months since Parliament passed a bill creating a new disability benefit, which is a crucial measure designed to lift thousands of people out of poverty. Yet, 18 months later, the regulations needed to implement this benefit are still not in place. Meanwhile, people living with disabilities continue to be poorer and poorer, trapped in a system that fails to meet even their most basic needs. How much longer will people living with disabilities have to wait before the government finally acts to protect their dignity and their right to a decent life? The Bloc Québécois is with them in this fight.
The honourable member for Battle River, Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the ultimate test of who he is as a leader, the head of the NDP will soon be forced to vote on his own words. Does he mean what he said, or is he a complete phony? That leader said just before a recent by-election that, quote, "The fact is the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people," end quote. I may not agree with that Maserati Marxist on much, but I do agree with him on that. But the question is now whether or not he agrees with himself, because he is the one keeping that Prime Minister in power. Despite saying he ripped up his coalition agreement and he even flip-flopping on his support for the carbon tax, despite voting for it 24 times. It's hard not to believe that this isn't simply a self-serving ploy for him to qualify for his pension. Well, he continues to give confidence to the Liberals. So, Mr. Speaker, the question is simple. Will the leader of the NDP support Canadians, or is he only in it for his pension?
The honourable member, order. The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Public Safety Committee summoned 2022 Conservative leadership candidate Patrick Brown to appear to answer questions on foreign interference, a motion that Conservative members on the committee, unsurprisingly, voted against. Yesterday morning, a bombshell news report came out that alleges agents of the Indian government interfered in Patrick Brown's leadership campaign. The interference, unsurprisingly again, was to the benefit of the current leader of the opposition. The reporting specifically alleges that Patrick Brown's national campaign co-chair, the Conservative MP for Calgary Nose Hill, was pressured to withdraw her support from him in that race. We need to get to the bottom of these allegations, Mr. Speaker. Who exactly was in contact with the member from Calgary Nose Hill and what was said? Only then will we start to understand the true depths of the foreign interference that took place.
Questions orales.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable chef de...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, whatever we may think of Mr. Trump's tariff threats, whether we think they are negotiating cards or a real plan, either way, we can focus on what we can control. But the Prime Minister has lost control. He has lost control of the border. He has lost control of immigration. He has lost control of spending. And Canadians are suffering through this difficult time. Will the Prime Minister reverse his decisions to repair what he has broken? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, when I spoke with President-elect Trump last week, I told him that we and the U.S. work well together to meet the major challenges facing our citizens, whether by stimulating economic development, whether by protecting our borders, whether it be by protecting our citizens from the impact of fentanyl and other hard drugs. We will always be there to work together, and I reassure the President-elect of that. On this side of the House, we will continue to invest in Canadians and be there to support people during difficult times. For example, with the tax rebate we're offering over the next few weeks, a tax rebate the Conservatives voted against. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister gave some gifts to President Trump, doubling our debt, increasing taxes. The red tape that is preventing natural resources projects from going forward. This has pushed $500 billion net of Canadian investment to the U.S. and has created American jobs. Meanwhile, Canadians' net income, which used to be equivalent to the Americans' income, is now $20,000 less. Will the Prime Minister reverse his destructive policies and fix what is broken? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition really cared about the well-being of Canadians, he would not have opposed the tax holiday we're giving Canadians over the next few months. He would not have stood against investing in school lunch programs for 400,000 additional children throughout the country. He would not have opposed dental care, which has delivered services as of today to more than 1 million Canadians. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition only wishes to instrumentalize and benefit from the difficulties facing Canadians, rather than trying to fix these problems like we are.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, whether one thinks that President Trump's tariff threats are a negotiating tactic or a real plan, what we do know is what we can control. And the Prime Minister has lost control of everything. He's lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending and the deficit, lost control of inflation and housing costs, lost control of his own caucus. This has put Canada in an unbearably weak position. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister reverse all the damage he's done, or will he just call a carbon tax election so we can do it for him?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think the Leader of the Opposition needs to reflect carefully on whether he really wants to amplify the erroneous narratives that the Americans are putting forward around, for example, our border, when less than 1% of migrants coming into the United States irregularly come from Canada, where 0.2% of fentanyl coming into the United States comes from Canada. These are things that we would all do well to stand up and say, yes, there's things we can and are working on together at our border, but amplifying these broken narratives is simply not responsible leadership.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Breaking things is not responsible, Mr. Speaker, and that's what he's been doing for 9 years. My job is not to cover that up for him. In fact, he's broken our economy. He's doubled the cost of housing, doubled the national debt, doubled trouble across our economy with higher taxes on working Canadians. He's in the process of raising taxes on investment and energy right now, while an American incoming president wants to take our jobs and our businesses. It's understandable why President Trump wants Canadian jobs to go south, but why does this Prime Minister want to help him do it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that Canadians are facing challenging moments, which is why we are stepping up to deliver for them, whether it's by delivering a tax break over the next few months that the Conservatives are totally opposed to, whether it's by delivering a national school food program that is already helping thousands of Canadians across the country that the Conservatives oppose, whether it's delivering dental care that's making a real difference in the lives of over 1 million Canadians that the Conservatives not just opposed but did everything they could do to scuttle. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader just wants to exploit the challenges Canadians are facing while we will solve them.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, he created all of those problems. And a food program that hasn't served a single meal, or a temporary tiny 10-cent tax cut on a bag of potato chips will not fix what he broke, especially considering that his next plan is to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. You can just picture President Trump calling our businesses, encouraging them to leave Canada and set up south of the border where there is no carbon tax and where other taxes are falling. Again, it's clear why the incoming American president wants to take our jobs. Why does this Prime Minister keep helping him do it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Let me say it once again, Mr. Speaker. The price on pollution puts more money back in the middle class's pockets across this country than it costs them. The Canada Carbon Rebate is a check that arrives 4 times a year and helps 8 out of 10 Canadians in jurisdictions where it arrives with more money than they pay on the price of pollution. It's how we fight climate change and build a strong economy for the future while putting money in the pockets of Canadians. That is what we are doing, while the Conservative leader wants to abandon not just the environment, but the economy as well.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, every day teaches us more about the twists and turns of our relationship with the Americans. And we know that the President's threats caused confusion. Was it about trade, drugs, or border security? Now, better late than never, the government is promising a detailed plan. I hope that will be budgeted as well. When will they help reassure Canadians and Quebecers about this? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we shared our immigration plan several weeks ago, and we will continue to invest to reduce the number of irregular migrants who are crossing our border in one direction or another. We have already significantly invested in staffing levels. Unlike the Conservatives, we will invest. The Conservatives cut staffing levels at the border. We will invest to protect our border security and Canadians. The Honourable Member. Well, we really need a plan for the future, not the past. The sooner we do, the sooner we'll realize that we're not actually talking about trade in the discussions. There are issues here about the cultural exemption, softwood lumber, aluminum, in addition to the 25% tariffs that are threatened. Will the Prime Minister reassure us that a representative designated by Quebec will be part of Team Canada and will be part of a future negotiations committee? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that in addition to speaking about the borders on Friday with the President-elect, we also spoke about trade. We talked about steel and aluminum. We talked about energy. We talked about softwood lumber. We talked about all the issues that we will be facing with the American administration. But like 4 years ago, we will defend Canadian jobs, and we will also show how we can benefit our relationship on both sides of the border by working well together. Thank you.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
The last Conservative government fired 1,100 border officers. That allowed illegal guns and drugs to flow freely into our country.
Man.
We are all paying the price of that callous Conservative cut. I want those border officers rehired. I want thousands more recruited, and I want their mandate expanded so they can patrol the entire border. Will the Prime Minister do that?
Hear, hear.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is exactly right. Conservative cuts hurt Canadians. Conservative cuts hurt our border security. Conservative cuts just hurt the Canadian economy. That is why it is so bewildering to see the Conservative leader continuing to stand up in cuts for dental care, cuts on housing investments, cuts for the kinds of services and benefits that Canadians need, whether it's a tax break for the next few months or school food programs. The Conservatives only know how to cut. That's not how Canadians prosper.
I ask all members please not to take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. L'honorable député de Burnaby Sud.
Prime Minister's inaction allow those Conservative cuts to continue to hurt Canadians. Il faut embaucher.
We need to hire thousands of agents at the border, and we need to keep good Canadian jobs. Donald Trump has said that he wants to balance his budget thanks to tariffs, so he will destroy Canadian lives to cover the American deficit. It's completely inappropriate, and the Prime Minister should be clear about that. Why did the Prime Minister come back from his dinner at Mar-a-Lago with empty hands? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, indeed, the Conservative cuts at the border have harmed Canada. And that is why we are continuing to invest, and we will be there to invest even more to protect our borders. We have already taken several measures over the last few years to reduce the number of irregular arrivals, to protect our borders from American weapons and drugs. We know there is still more to do, and we will do that in partnership with the American administration, with whom we share these security priorities.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas South Glengarry.
Despite 25% tariffs threatening to kill Canadian jobs and crush the economy, the Liberals have created border disorder between Canada and the United States. Yesterday, the Minister of Public Safety said that bolstering the power of CBSA to secure our borders is, quote, not a priority. After 9 years, this hands-off approach is no surprise. There's 500,000 illegal people here in Canada. Unprocessed asylum claimants are up 2,500%, and they think 3 million temporary residents are going to leave voluntarily when their visa expires. Where is the Canada First plan to fix the border disorder?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we have made clear, the Prime Minister just repeated that again a few minutes ago, that we will continue to support the important work done by the women and men who work for the Canadian Border Services Agency and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We think it was unfortunate the previous Conservative government cut the money available for this important work. We've also said that we're prepared to increase both the human resources and technology and equipment to support the important work they do. We'll do that in collaboration with our American partners, and we still have a lot of confidence in this work that's being done.
That's right.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas South Glengarry.
Here is further proof of the Liberals' border disorder. Today at committee, the Minister of Public Safety was asked, will more CBSA officers be deployed on our border? The minister doesn't know.
Yep.
Will CBSA officers be authorized to patrol between border crossings? The minister doesn't know. Will RCMP officers be redeployed to patrol the border? The minister doesn't know. The only plan the Liberals have is the plan to have a plan. It's creating border disorder. Where is the Canada First plan to fix what they broke?
That was Raquel Dancho asking that in committee. We watched that.
The honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. It would appear the only plan the Conservatives have is to think up silly new rhymes in question period. Mr. Speaker, what we've said at the committee that the member referred to a few moments ago, we've said it for many months, that we will continue to invest additional resources in the important work of the CBSA and of the RCMP. We're obviously looking at all ideas that would help strengthen the security posture at our border. We believe that the security of our border is currently ensured. We believe in the integrity of our borders. We believe in working with the Americans and continuing to always look to do more.
That's right.
The honourable member for Calgary Shepherd.
The Public Safety Minister said yesterday that bolstering CBSA powers to secure our borders isn't a priority. That's a direct quote from him. Meanwhile, 3 million temporary resident visas are set to expire at the end of next year. Illegal border crossings are rising, and the newly elected U.S. president is threatening a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. That's an economic challenge that we can't ignore. Where is the Canada First plan to end this border disorder?
The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Immigration and Refugees.
Mr. Speaker, it comes down to this. Do you trust the guy who renegotiated NAFTA with Mr. Trump? Do you trust the guy who secured the border during the pandemic of the century? Do you trust the guy who went down on President Trump's playing field to fight for Canadians to secure the border against the guy who spent 20 years making up interesting rhymes, spent 20 years securing one only thing, his own paycheck and a bloated pension?
We all trust Pierre Monin.
The honourable member for Calgary Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of breaking the immigration system, do you trust the guy who did this? He has over 260,000 unprocessed asylum claims right now, a record high. That's a 2,502% increase since 2015. There's around 500,000 people in Canada illegally here, a 630% increase in U.S. border control encounters of people illegally attempting to get into the United States, the longest wait times for many visas right now, and a 2 million application backlog. So when will the Liberals stop making up excuses and end the border disorder to help Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
I guess broken border was too dumb to reuse today, so they tried something else. Look, we proposed, you can't make this up, we proposed a set of asylum reforms in May as part of the last budgetary exercise while we were putting money into the Immigration Refugee Board to increase processing. What did they do? They voted against it. Look, same thing last week when they voted against a tax break, the thing they've been harping about for well over a year. Look, Mr. Speaker, these guys, again, and I'll say it, are all flannel and no axe.
I'm just going to ask members, in particular the member from Dufferin-Caledon, please not take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. L'honorable député de Charlebourg.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we've had border disorder since 2017. Hundreds of thousands of people crossed the border, and now we have 500,000 people, irregular migrants in our country, in addition to people who may stay here after receiving a temporary visa. The Prime Minister has lost control of immigration on the border. What is his plan to fix this? The Honourable Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. You can't make this up, Mr. Speaker. In May, we proposed asylum reforms. We know we need them. And what did the Conservatives do? Nothing. They spend their time making up rhyming slogans. They try to pretend they're tough, but actually, when the chips are down, they don't do anything. They are completely useless. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. The first thing that we have done since 2017 is that we criticized this Prime Minister's stunt that made no sense and that led to more immigration problems. And of course, there's limits to what we can do from here, but when we're on the other side, we'll fix the problem. But there's meanwhile a problem at the border. Weapons trafficking, human trafficking, all sorts of major issues. These human traffickers are being paid millions of dollars to help people cross the border, which is creating even more disorder. Does the Prime Minister have a real plan, or should we have an election and we will show that we have a real plan? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, it is completely irresponsible for the Conservatives to claim that we could fix this problem by adding to the existing level of misinformation about our border security. I would ask our colleague to be more responsible before repeating slogans that were probably handed down by the leader's office, because this is not in the interest of Canadians or the Canadian economy. What's in our interest is to work with the Americans, support our police services and our American law enforcement partners in order to have a safe border, as it is now. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, I would like to start by offering the Bloc Québécois solidarity to the workers who are losing their jobs at Lion Electrique. We are at the 11th hour for this important Quebec company in the electric transportation sector. Ottawa needs to do something. The company believed the Prime Minister when they said that they would be investing billions of dollars in transit electrification in Canada. The company invested a great deal to be ready, but the zero-emission transit plan never delivered. Will the government finally do something about this and actually meet its commitments? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Everyone in this House cares about the workers at companies like this, and we know that Lion Electrique is a real flagship company in Quebec. It is an important part of
Freeland bobbling her head.
Of the sector of electric transit, and we have been working closely with them. Thanks to these plans, hundreds of electric buses will be manufactured, and we will continue to work with Lion Electrique and the government of Quebec. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, the Rassemblement pour la laïcité is now adding its voice to the government of Quebec's position. They are both asking for the religious exemption in the criminal code to be abolished. The exemption that makes it possible to engage in hate speech with impunity. The Liberals keep saying that they're going to do the best thing that they can for Canadians. Well, how convenient. The Bloc Québécois has proffered Bill C-373, which will do exactly that, and it is supported by 66% of Canadians and 75% of Quebecers. So will the government finally commit to supporting our bill? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety and Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank our colleague for raising an issue that we all care about. I'd say there's a fair level of consensus here. We all have the right and responsibility to do what we can to promote solidarity and coexistence in a country where diversity is one of our core values and strengths. In this wonderful country that we've had for a long time already, and we are constantly working closely with the government of Quebec to promote that. The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, I don't think that was an answer to my question. I might have to go back and check. Mr. Speaker, listen, hate speech is supposed to be a criminal offense, period. Either you believe that or you don't. So Quebec is asking for this religious exception in Section 319 of the Criminal Code protecting hate speech to be repealed. Great. The Bloc Québécois has created Bill C-373 to do exactly that. It's the only bill that is going to do that. And this is a clear principle that deserves clear support. Will the government finally support the Bloc Québécois in amending Section 319 of the Criminal Code and getting rid of the religious exemption? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General. I completely agree with what the Bloc Québécois is proposing. Given that there is such a serious situation in Canada, the increase in hate and hate speech throughout Canada, in Quebec and elsewhere, So if we could just manage to move forward on this bill, we need the help of the Bloc Québécois to end the filibuster in this House so we can actually talk about that. We also have a Bill C-63 that would also touch upon the same sections of the criminal code as the Bloc Québécois bill. So we're simply asking the Bloc Québécois to work with us to fight hate.
The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister's report card is in. Canadians have the highest consumer debt in the G7. Per capita GDP has fallen for 6 consecutive quarters, and Canadians now make $30,000 less than their American counterparts. This is a made-in-Canada per capita GDP recession. And in the face of global trade and economic uncertainty, the Finance Minister's plan increased taxes on energy, on entrepreneurs, farmers, and physicians. So will this Finance Minister reverse her tax increases so Canadians can keep their jobs and investments at home?
The Honourable Minister for Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seem to have an inferiority complex vis-a-vis the United States. But on this side of the House, we are proud to be Canadian. We are proud that the inflation rate in Canada has been within the Bank of Canada's target range all year. We're proud that we have the lowest debt and deficit in the G7, far lower than the United States. And we are proud of our universal single-payer healthcare system, which means Canadians live 4 years longer than our friends south of the border. We're proud to be Canadian. They should be too.
The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, every day you turn around, it's another scandal coming from this government. We're proud to be Canadian, and we're going to fix it after the next election. But since the Finance Minister doesn't like answering the complex question, let's start with an easy one. Last year, she made a commitment that the deficit would be no greater than $40.1 billion. Mr. Speaker, this goes exactly to the Finance Minister's credibility. Will she confirm that last year's deficit was less than $40.1 billion, or has she broken yet another deficit promise?
Here, here.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. One moment, please. The Honourable Member from York Simcoe, please. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives are so keen on supporting Canadians, as they like to claim every single day in this House, I have a great idea for them. Why don't we together give Canadians a tax break for the holidays? That's right. Why don't we lift the GST on prepared foods so a working mom can pick up a rotisserie chicken on the way home, make it easier for parents to buy toys for their kids for Christmas? If the Conservatives were honest, true to their professed ideals, they would be supporting us in this measure.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, the holidays are coming right up. But because of inflation, Quebecers are struggling. 25% of people in Quebec won't be able to spend as much over the holidays, which is a sign that the food inflation we've experienced over the last 9 years is still causing problems. And the Bloc Québécois is complicit in this government's inflationary spending. It has also betrayed Quebecers by preventing an election this fall. Everyone wants to know, when will we finally have an election? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, it would seem that the member across the way is not looking at our economic data, because what the numbers show is that inflation has been within the Bank of Canada's target range for 10 months. And because of that success, the benchmark rate has already decreased 4 times. But we do agree that we need to support Quebecers over the holidays, and that is why we will be giving them a break on the GST. I hope the Conservatives will support us in that.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, The best gifts that Liberal Santa Claus and the Bloc Québécois elves have managed to offer Canadians for Christmas are inflationary policies. Canadians are struggling. They will spend less during the most wonderful time of the year because of this Liberal government's incompetence. The Bloc Liberal coalition is not a gift to anyone, Mr. Speaker. When will Canadians no longer need to make a wish list? When will they be able to receive the greatest gift of all, a Conservative government? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, once again, this question is incoherent and it doesn't make sense when it comes to the economy. I am happy, though, to hear Conservatives talking about inflation because we have good news for Canadians. The good news is that for 10 months now, inflation in Canada has been within the Bank of Canada's target range. That is why we can afford to give Canadians a real Christmas present. A tax holiday, the GST break. The Conservatives should help us do so.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, according to an investigation by the Ontario Coroner's Office, an additional 220 deaths occurred at an Ontario residential schools, more than 50% higher than previously believed. This confirmed what we already have known. The Indian residential school system was a genocidal project, yet this government has not acted to protect survivors from rising residential school denialism, undermining truth and justice. So will the Liberals support my bill to include in the criminal code the protection of survivors from denialists inciting hate?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I think the more we find out about the residential schools, the more Canadians realize the horrific tragedies that occurred there. As a nephew of multiple aunts who went to the residential school, we continue to focus on support. We continue to focus on healing. That's why we have a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, for us to continue to have these discussions, for us to open Canadians' mind to the experience of many First Nations who went to the residential schools, the Métis, Inuit, but also their descendants. And, Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to be focused on that support for Canadians.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, today there are nearly 1 million Canadians under the age of 29 who are neither employed nor engaged in training. Wow. We haven't seen a youth unemployment crisis this severe since the Conservatives were in power. Oh. According to Deloitte, this will cost our economy $18 billion over the next decade. Will the Liberals listen to New Democrats and set up a youth climate corps so young Canadians can gain the skills and experience they need while protecting our environment?
The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
Mr. Speaker, it has been a tenet of our government to support young people, and we've done that in so many ways. There are 70,000 young people, Mr. Speaker, that have benefited from Canada's summer jobs. And I'll tell you, the Auditor General confirmed this just this week, Mr. Speaker, that those young people that attend CSJ actually do better in the workforce after having done so. We have always supported young people and will continue to do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government has introduced a GST tax break that will put money directly into the pockets of Canadians, especially for families who need it the most. In my constituency of Davenport, every penny counts, and a temporary GST tax break for the holiday season and early New Year is very welcome. My question to the minister is simple. Can she explain why the Conservative leader and his party voted against this tax break, especially when they claim to be champions of tax cuts and affordability?
Way to go, Judy. Hold on, please. Eric?
What's he muting for? Why is he muting the mic?
I'm going to ask the honourable member from Davenport to please repeat the question, because I did not catch the end of the question, which the honourable member from Davenport.
Okay, twice.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government has introduced a GST tax break that will put money directly into the pockets of Canadians, especially for families who need it most. In my constituency of Davenport, every penny counts, and a temporary GST tax break for the holiday season and early New Year is very welcome. My question to the minister is simple. Can she explain why the Conservative leader and his party voted against this tax break, especially when they claim to be champions of tax cuts and affordability?
Good question.
Now what?
I'm sorry, say that again. Although the preamble of the question dealt with a government initiative, the question itself was asking the government to comment on the, in terms of, colleagues, I'll have more to say about this at the end of question period. In terms of question, that I will mention to the honourable member from Davenport that unfortunately that question does not deal with the administration of government. And
what the heck?
Eric. So I'm afraid that question is considered out of order, and I will be moving on to the next question. The honourable member, order please. The honourable member from York Simcoe.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General has revealed that this NDP Liberal government has paid out $3.5 billion in taxpayer funds to tens of thousands of people that were never entitled to receive it in the first place. This Prime Minister loves to spend Canadians' money, and he doesn't care if it's wasted or misspent, just as long as he can pose for the photo. Will the Prime Minister admit he has lost control of spending and his only solution is to raise taxes on Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have seen many versions of the Conservative Party leader during the 20 years in office, including the 2021 version that campaigned on the GST holiday. Unfortunately, this version hasn't supported small businesses. Our government is giving Canadians a GST tax break starting December 14th that will benefit retailers across Canada. In fact, the Retail Council of Canada affirmed that our tax break will create major tax savings for Canadians, along with the economic stimulus for our industry. And having more money overall in consumers' wallet should also benefit sellers of other goods not captured in the announcement. We will be there for small business, Mr. Speaker, and that will never change.
The Honourable Member from Charleswood, St. James's, and Avoya, Headingley.
Every day there's a new scandal after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government. That's right. Now the Auditor General reports another billion-dollar boondoggle. $3.5 billion in taxpayers' money was paid to 77,000 people who weren't even eligible under the CEBA program. And Liberals to boot, Liberals gave Accenture $313 million to run the program without even having to bid on the contract, to hire workers in Brazil. Never ascribe to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. When will the Prime Minister stop the incompetence and stand up for taxpayers for a change?
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, I've already addressed this question. What Canadians really want to know is why the leader of the Conservative Party refuses to get his security clearance. Our leader has a security clearance. The NDP leader has a security clearance. Well, the Bloc leader has a security clearance, and the Green Party leader has her security clearance. Two former CSIS directors have made it clear there is no substitute for a clearance. He owes his caucus and Canadians an explanation why doesn't he get a security clearance, and what does he have to hide?
I'm not going to recognize the honourable member with what appears with something that is not normally worn in this House, or that the member is normally worn in this House. I'll ask the honourable member to please remove her winter hat. The honourable member from King Vaughan.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberals, it's just more waste and mismanagement. The AG's scathing report slammed the Prime Minister's treatment of seniors. This government broke the New Horizon program. Value for money concerns with identity of nearly half of the approved projects. In one case, the government paid $23,000 for a door in a senior's residence that was never installed. Mr. Speaker, when will this Prime Minister actually start caring for seniors, end the waste, and call an election?
The Honourable Minister for Labour and for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, how dare the Conservative Party of Canada stand up in this House and talk about the treatment of seniors. I will remind that member that her former leader, Stephen Harper, went to Davos, the World Economic Forum, instead of going to, say, King Vaughan, to announce to Canadians that from henceforth the retirement age will be moving to 67 from 65. We reversed that. That member should be ashamed of herself. And we also built the door, Mr. Speaker.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lilley, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, 9 years of this Liberal government has meant 9 years of fiscal irresponsibility. Yesterday, the Auditor General of Canada revealed that 77,000 ineligible businesses received a total of $3.5 billion from the CEBA Emergency Business Account. Mr. Speaker, why does this Liberal government choose to enrich foreign companies and expensive consultants instead of supporting our Canadian local businesses? The Honourable Minister of Small and Medium Businesses. Mr. Speaker, our government helped approximately 900,000 small businesses through CEBA, and over 80% of them have paid back their loans. We extended the repayment deadline not once, but twice. We did exactly what we had to do to help small businesses, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Shefford. The Auditor General's report proves that the Liberals have no idea what they're talking about when they say that seniors are too wealthy to deserve support. The Auditor General's report shows that Ottawa is not collecting any solid data to determine whether its programs, such as old age security, are really meeting people's needs. They have no idea. They don't know whether their programs are working now or whether they will work in the future. So, when Liberals say that seniors deserve neither a pension nor a $250 check, well, according to the Auditor General's report, saying that is a strictly political choice. So why are Liberals choosing to forsake retirees? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, when the member says it's a political choice, well, was it a political choice as well to vote against increasing the GIS, Guaranteed Income Supplement? Would that have been good for Quebec seniors? What about support for the Canada Dental Care Plan, which is available to the most vulnerable seniors in Quebec and everywhere in Canada? The Bloc Québécois made another political choice then. They voted no. They voted against dental care for seniors. Mr. Speaker, the political choices are being made on that side of the House. On this side, we will always be there for seniors.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Shefford. Well, I have to repeat myself then. According to the Auditor General, the federal government has no data whatsoever to determine whether its programs such as old age security are sufficient to meet the needs of seniors. And yet, the federal government apparently knows for a fact that $3 billion to increase seniors' pensions is too much. Meanwhile, this same government claims that $6 billion in election goodies is just the ticket, just the right thing to do. No other party supports their election goodies, but all other parties are in favour of increasing seniors' pensions. When will the government stop improvising and hyper-focusing on the upcoming election and do the right thing by giving royal recommendation to C-319? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois' political choices, I could list a bunch of them. They've made many poor choices for the future of Quebec and for the future of Quebec's seniors. Now I'd like to bring up another example, Mr. Speaker, of what we've done. We also enhanced the Canada Pension Plan to offer future generations and also seniors an enhance in their retirement pensions. The Bloc voted against it. We voted for it. We're here for today's seniors and tomorrow's seniors, unlike the Bloc Québécois. I often rise to encourage members to please listen to those who have the floor. We should not be talking out of turn so that those who use interpretation services are able to hear.
Regina Capel.
The NDP leader put on a big phony show this summer on the eve of a by-election, pretending to rip up the coalition deal. And recently he said, quote, the Liberals will always cave to corporate greed and always step in to make sure unions have no power. We couldn't have said it better ourselves. And Conservatives have put forward a motion agreeing with the NDP leader. So Canadians will soon find out whether or not he means anything he ever says, or if he'll sell out union brothers and sisters to keep this corrupt Liberal government in power just so he can keep his pension. So, question to the government, have they put the coalition deal back together so the Prime Minister keeps power and the NDP leader keeps his pension?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, my question.
Sorry. One moment, please. Eric?
What now? Holy frickin' muting the mic.
So again, I will speak to this near the end of after question period, but I'm going to encourage, that was again not about the government business, but I see that I do see that the Honourable Leader of the Government, Government House Leader wants to rise to answer. So the Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I wish you had afforded the same courtesy to the Minister of Finance, who also wanted to answer a question. And I think it would be appropriate to make sure that we apply the same standard moving forward. But what I would like to say to the Leader of the Opposition is that we gave him an opportunity to debate that, and instead of taking it, they ran away afraid. So, Mr. Speaker, I am surprised that he's even bringing this up, because when we gave them an opportunity to hold that vote, they said no, Mr. Speaker, but that's just another pattern of their behavior where they say one thing and do another. That's
Up, Freeland.
The honourable member for Regina Capel.
That's just not true. They just got mixed up on what day the debate is going to be had. It's going to be held this Thursday, and the vote will be on Monday, and all Canadians will be watching who's on the side of Canadian workers.
Okay, so there you go. Debates Thursday,
This
votes
Prime
Monday.
Minister launched a brutal assault on workers. He devalued their paychecks with his inflation. He drove up prices with his carbon tax. He's doubled housing costs. He's hiked taxes, canceled big projects that put union members back to work, and issued edicts that undermine their collective bargaining rights. So once again, question to the government. Have they put the coalition deal back together so that the NDP will qualify for his pension while Canadian workers suffer?
The Honourable Minister for Labour and for Seniors.
The member seems to be referring to incidents last summer where, I might add, I consulted with the Conservative Party who were urging me, as we did at the time, to come to the aid of farmers in Saskatchewan and throughout Western Canada who were trying to get what was a bumper crop to the ports and to international markets, which is the pride of Canada, Mr. Speaker. We intervened to save Canadian farmers and to save Canadian union jobs. That's what we did. The Conservatives sat on the sidelines. We'll always stand for Canadian workers.
The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Speaker, the NDP leader claims to have ripped up the deal with the Liberals, calling this government weak, selfish, and beholden to corporate greed. Yet he's voted over 24 times to hike the carbon tax, driving up the cost of everything. Meanwhile, 2 million Canadians visited food banks last month, 18% of them workers. Will the leader of the NDP sell out Canadians again, or has the Prime Minister made another backroom deal with the leader of the NDP to secure his pension at the cost of Canadian workers?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I'm not sure that question had anything to do with government business, but on this side of the House, when we do that, whether it was the member from Kingston or whether it was the member from Davenport, our questions were taken away, even though they were with regards to government business. However, what I can say is that the Conservatives keep running scared. Whenever we give them an opportunity to do what they say, they vote against it. Whether it's cutting taxes and giving people a GST holiday, what did they do? Vote against. Whether it's actually coming forward with a motion to vote confidence in the government, what do? Vote against. Mr. Speaker, they're too scared to actually act on their issues. They'd rather provide slogans than solutions. On this side of the House, we're acting for Canadians. Thank you.
L'honorable député d'Ottawa-Vanier.
The honourable member for Ottawa-Vanier. Mr. Speaker, the government is introducing a GST break that will put money directly back into Canadians' pockets, especially into the pockets of those who need it the most. But unfortunately, we know that the Conservatives are against it. They continue to vote against all of our affordability measures. Can the minister explain how all of us in this place should be supporting Canadians during these tough times? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. I thank the member for Ottawa-Vanier for her excellent question. Indeed, the Conservative leader doesn't really make sense. He says he wants to axe taxes, but he voted against our tax break last week. He voted against the Canada Dental Care Plan, which is helping 3 million Canadians. And he says the dental care plan does not exist. He is against our plans because he says that they are like Soviet investments. He says he wants to build more houses, but he's against all of our housing plans and initiatives. How much more nonsense and talking out of both sides of his mouth are we going to get from the Conservative leader?
For 9 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians cannot afford their rent or mortgages. The NDP leader has called the Liberals too weak, selfish, and beholden to corporate interests to fight for Canadians. But it is the NDP leader himself that is keeping the Prime Minister in power. Conservatives have tabled a motion of confidence using the NDP leader's own words. Will the NDP leader stand behind his words, or has the government made another spineless backroom deal at the expense of Canadians?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Speaker, the Conservative members of Parliament are really getting to be pretty ridiculous around here. You know, they have an opportunity to ask real questions of the government, but instead they choose to play petty politics. I'll be honest, Mr. Speaker, yesterday I introduced a motion that would give them the opportunity to do that. Remember, the Leader of the Opposition tweeted about that over the weekend, but when given the opportunity, they said no, Mr. Speaker. Why? Because they're too afraid and too weak to actually do what they say, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we're going to stand up for Canadians. We're going to provide real affordability measures, even if they try to stand in our way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what is ridiculous is Canadians are struggling to feed, heat, and house themselves while the NDP leader waits to get his pension. In a by-election stunt, he claimed to rip up his agreement with the Liberals. Yet the NDP's actions prove that the carbon tax coalition is driven by his pension and the Prime Minister's lust for power. Canadians cannot afford this costly coalition. Will the NDP vote non-confidence, or has the Prime Minister crafted yet another spineless backroom deal?
I know members are having some questions, but I will have an opportunity to speak to this after question period. The Honourable Leader of the Government of
Mr. Speaker, it kind of boggles the mind that the Conservatives are talking about pensions for their members when the Leader of the Opposition has a $2 million pension from the House of Commons, Mr. Speaker. It's unbelievable what they say. They say one thing, they do another. You cannot trust these Conservative members of Parliament with anything that they say, because pretty much what they're accusing others of is exactly what they do. Thank you.
So, translation, he doesn't need to stay in power. He still stays an MP because he wants to represent his constituents, and he keeps getting elected.
Mr. Speaker, Tara D'Souza sexually assaulted a 3-month-old baby. That baby needed reconstructive surgery. Tara D'Souza is in a woman's jail in BC. That woman's jail also has the mother-child program, which allows mothers to raise their children. I visited that jail, and I saw exactly where D'Souza was standing. There was a straight line that took me less than a minute from where D'Souza was standing to the mother-child house. No large fences, a straight pathway. What is this government doing, allowing sex offenders near children in jail?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the safety and security of children who participate in the Mother-Child program is obviously a top priority for the Correctional Service of Canada. Mr. Speaker, it's important to understand that this program has existed for decades, including during the time that Mr. Harper was Prime Minister of Canada. There are eligibility criteria and protocols to participate in this program. It includes child welfare screening done by competent provincial authorities. Mr. Speaker, the member opposite should be careful before he tries to politicize such tragic circumstances and these most heinous crimes.
Shh. Order. Order. The Honourable. Order. Members have had an opportunity to ask a question, and members have an opportunity to answer. The Honourable Member from Egmont.
Mr. Speaker, our plan for a national school food program is moving forward quickly. We know that access to healthy food can make all the difference in a child's day. Children deserve to be properly fed at school, and the benefits to families are obvious. On Friday, we saw more great news. To the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, what's happening on school food?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Last week in PI, we announced that 1,500 more children will receive lunch this school year, and 800 more kids will get breakfast or snacks at school. Because of this program, Mr. Speaker, 184,000 more kids this school year will receive food at school, almost 1.5 million meals. Now, the leader of the Conservatives said even today that this doesn't exist. I challenge him to ask the 184,000 kids, and they'll school him, Mr. Speaker.
You said that yesterday. You just copied exactly what you said yesterday.
The honourable member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
The Liberals are letting seniors down. They don't even track the impact of the programs meant to support them. Seniors are falling through the cracks, and this government has no plan to fix it. And they excluded them from the recent $250 rebate.
Shame.
And the Conservatives, they want to cut support for seniors altogether.
Oh, yeah.
Seniors have been saying for years that the OAS doesn't cut it, and cruel and callous GIS clawbacks are putting them even farther behind. Why do the Liberals care so little about seniors?
Good question.
And the Honourable Minister for Labour and the Minister for Seniors.
Well, I want to thank that member for the question. Happily, she and her party have supported the Liberal record of success in supporting seniors. Things like dental care, things like expanding old age security, things like topping up the guaranteed income supplement. That we have managed to accomplish in this Parliament, and it is a great tribute to those members who have voted for those things. Unfortunately, we've had to do so walking into the headwind across the aisle from the Conservatives et le Bloc Québécois, who vote systematically every time, Mr. Speaker, against seniors.
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Member from North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, veterans with mental health conditions don't need more red tape to get help. Like support with home care services like cleaning and mowing the lawn. They must prove their condition every year. This policy is discriminatory, sexist, and completely unnecessary. The Liberals are letting veterans down just like the Conservatives did when they cut veteran services. Does the minister recognize the extra burden she's placing on MST survivors, veterans, and their families?
The Honourable Minister for Veterans.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we have always been there to help support veterans. Since 2016, we've invested more than $11.5 billion additional dollars to help support veterans and their families. Unlike the Conservative Party of Canada that closed the 9 Veterans Affairs office, on this side of the House, we opened them. We also hired additional staff to make sure that the appropriate assessments and adjudications were done in a timely fashion. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to mental health benefits, we have made improvements to ensure that veterans, when they apply for the benefits, have access to them immediately. On this side of the House, we will always there to help support our veterans and their family as they deserve it.
I see that the Honourable Government House Leader is rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in light of what happened in question period today from the question from the member from Davenport, as well as the question that was posed last week on Wednesday by the member from Kingston, in terms of taking away a government's response, the precedent that had been set in this place is that even if a member asks a question that is not related to government business, if the minister gets up, the Speaker had recognized that minister to speak. And so I'm just asking for some consistency and fairness in the practice so that we all know as members of Parliament in the frame of how these questions should be asked and whether an answer is respected or is given or not, as well as what if a member from the opposition is asking a question that is out of order, what the consequence would be for that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good
point of order. The Honourable Member from Battle River Crowfoot is rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the same point of order, it I think is important to highlight that while the government did ask in their questions and you challenge them on their relevance to the administration of government, which is articulated very clearly throughout the course of our standing orders, when it comes to asking questions directly related to the confidence of the government, of which the coalition agreement and the fact that the fourth party continues to back up the government in this place, Mr. Speaker, that has direct relevance into the administration of governments. For if a government cannot command the confidence of the House, they cannot administer the government.
I have two other points of order which have been recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Member for Kingston Island, followed by the Honourable Member from Sandwich Gulf Islands. And I see that the Honourable Member from New Westminster Burnaby is also rising, as well as from Brantford Brant. The Honourable Member.
To add to the intervention of the House Leader, Mr. Speaker, I would like to submit the following to you. There seems to be a precedent that's developing that if you are of the side of the government, you belong to the political party of the government, your question will not be answered if you deem it not to be in line with government business. The problem with that is, Mr. Speaker, is that neither the member from Davenport nor myself are members of the government. We're not parliamentary secretaries and we're not cabinet. Therefore, we're entitled to the exact same rights that you afford to every other member of this House. So, if you're deciding that a precedent will be set, that they will be able to have their questions answered, you must afford the same, you must afford the exact same respect to our questions. Otherwise, I would argue that you're breaching our privilege.
The Honourable Member from Sandwich Gulf Islands is rising on a point of order. The Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, it's a different point of order but related to the same question, which is this. When a member stands and poses a question which you find not to be within the proper frame of government business, if someone had stood and asked a question which used an inappropriate word, that member would be given an opportunity to rephrase the question and ask it again. In this instance, the Honourable Member for Davenport has lost that opportunity to ask a question forever. And I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if we could if you could see the latitude to see if a member can quickly reframe a question and make it within the proper framework of government business.
I thank the Honourable Member for Sandwich and the Gulf Islands. I'm going to add the Honourable Member from New Westminster Burnaby is rising on a similar point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, if you look at the jurisprudence, the traditions of this House, you have just a point to references from decisions made by the member for Regina Capel when he was Speaker of the House, when he determined that you were absolutely correct in cutting off a Liberal question that wasn't dealing with government business. You would be equally right in cutting every single one of those frivolous and vexatious questions coming from the Conservative Party. It's not as if they don't know the rules. They just refuse to respect them. So I would ask you to have them respect it by, if the question is not dealing with government business, you cut it off immediately. You don't let them finish, because that's what the member from Regina Capel put in place in this House.
I thank the Honourable Member. I have to admit I could not hear the last sentence that he had said, but I will read Hansard to inform myself as to what he had said. The Honourable Member from Brantford Brant is rising on the same point of order.
No, different point of order.
Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I'm asking for an apology and retraction from the Minister of Labour in his use of unparliamentary language and an ad hominem attack against the member of Kamloops Caribou Thompson. Referred to him as a slime ball. Clearly heard it. Colleagues beside me heard it. I asked him about it. He doubled down. Unparliamentary, unprofessional, Mr. Speaker.
I see that the Honourable Minister is rising on his feet.
Speaker, there was a time in this House where the honour of members was to be presumed. And the question that came from across there was strongly intimating that the Minister of Public Safety willingly put children in danger. We don't do that in this House. We should not do that in this House. That is not cool, and that is not correct.
That's not cool.
That member should apologize to the Minister of Public Safety for impugning his character and raising such an absurd question in this House of Commons. And I withdraw the insult if those snowflakes cannot take it.
No, you're going to have to retract that too.
It is perfectly clear to this chair, as well as order. It's perfectly clear to this chair that members are in need of returning to their homes for the holidays. I'm going to the Honourable Minister. I'm going to ask him to withdraw that last comment as well, and I hope he'll also. I'll ask the Honourable Member to withdraw that last item, and then I will come back to the House on the rest.
In the spirit of the season where white stuff is indeed on the ground, if members take offense to being called a snowflake, then I certainly withdraw the snowflake comment that I said about the snowflake thing.
Okay, so we are. The chair is going to come back to the House on this matter. I do see the honourable member from Kamloops Thompson Caribou is rising on his feet, and I hope the honourable member will be very germane. The honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a member of His Majesty's cabinet. There's no place for that. And secondly, to address the substance of the point, I did not say that the minister is putting people in danger. There are facts, and the government.
Well, let him finish.
So you let him go on.
Go on.
I'm going to start from this hop here, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the honourable member. I'm going to come back to the House on this matter.
Let him finish. You just cut him off halfway. He's still talking.
The honourable.
What the hell is going on?
One moment, please.
You have to let him finish. He got like 5 words out. Dude, Greg has done so bad today that even his own Liberals are pissed off with him.
So the only reason I'll address myself to the member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou. The only reason why I was getting to the point is because I made an engagement to members that on the issue that was raised by the member of Brantford Brant that I would come back to the House on this matter. But I'll certainly invite the member from Kamloops Thompson Caribou to get straight to the point, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is it's the government policy that puts people in danger. 3-month-old babies with sex offenders.
Now this is clearly in debate. The chair will come back to this matter. But to the matter that was raised by the honourable member, the honourable government House Leader, as well as a member from Kingston and the Islands and a member from Davenport, there's a few, as well as Battle River Crowfoot. It's really important for the chair to order, please. It's important to recall that oral questions are to be addressed, of course, to the government, meaning to the minister or to a parliamentary secretary, and that regarding matters of the administrative nature of any government. The only exceptions are questions addressed to committee chairs regarding the agenda of a committee, or to a representative of the Board of Internal Economy. It is not the order to ask questions of members of opposition parties, or nor to ask the government to answer for positions taken by opposition parties. And I would like to remind all members that when they are preparing their questions, they clearly should take that into account. Members have been very good about, of course, having some preambles, or maybe perhaps at the very end, putting in a hook that relates to the administrative matters of government, or to a committee, or to the Board of Internal Economy, and those questions are considered in order. But there are occasions, when questions arise are determined to be out of order, and I allow the minister to respond. But that is where, especially in cases where there is, and I'll be very careful about this, where the question contains criticisms of the government, and I want to afford the government an opportunity to respond. In the cases where questions from members of the governing party contain criticisms of opposition parties without it being under the responsibility of the government, then it is allowing a response from the minister would only seem to compound that criticism without giving the opportunity for the party that is being criticized to respond. So that is the reason why we have these rules. This is the reason why this has been brought forward. I brought this forward last fall in a ruling to members, and I will come back with a more detailed version of this, but I just want to give members a quick top-line view on this matter. The honourable member from Kingston-Leon is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, could you then please explain why the party that comes from the governing side even has 3 questions? The point is for us as MPs who are not part of the government to still hold the government accountable. That's the whole point. So you have to afford the exact same treatment to every member who is not a member of the government.
This is wild.
I thank the honourable member for
Kingston-Leon
raising this point, and I will come back to the House with a fuller explanation as I had just promised earlier.
I don't think Liberals should be asking Liberals
The House
questions.
will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the previous question to the motion to concur in the 10th report of the Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development. I'm sorry, this is not the correct... I apologize to members. It being 3:34, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the amendment of Mr. Cooper to the motion to concur in the 18th report of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. Call on the members.
Okay, so they're going to get to a vote and stuff. That was... arguably, the points of order after question period were more entertaining than question period. But yeah, that's probably it for today. There is a committee on here. There's a few committees on after this, like starting any minute now. One of them's in camera, and another one I actually wouldn't mind covering, but I don't think it's going to be that interesting. It's just going to be on Uber and stuff, so... I don't think we'll be covering any committees after this. We did cover a pretty good committee this morning. There was multiple committees on this morning at the same time where we tried to flip back and forth and catch as many as we could of the good conservative rounds. So if you didn't see that, do I always stream question period? Yes. Monday to Thursday. Fridays are usually a half day in the House, and there's nothing really going on, so we don't stream on Fridays. But always Monday to Thursday we're streaming question period. But yeah, if you didn't catch that committee from this morning, it was pretty good, so go check that that stream. There was some good rounds with Kuzi. There was some good rounds with Dancho. We had Anita Anand in, as well as Dominic LeBlanc. They kind of got roasted this morning, so definitely going to be live for question period tomorrow, and probably a committee or two. I'll just double check to see what's going on the agenda for tomorrow. But that's it for question period here today. Just before we go, I want to give a quick shout out to Donnie, to Lynn Brooks, to Lori B, Mr. G. Appreciate you guys all with the super chats, and that always helps the channel out a little bit extra. So really appreciate you guys. I'm done with this day in politics. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm done as well. I've got to go run a quick couple errands, and then I'll get some clips out on the channel. So if you don't want to watch the whole 2-hour live stream from this morning, or you don't feel like just flipping through that long stream, I'll get the 5-minute clips out and things like that. So appreciate everybody tuning in and watching. I mean, that was some pretty good points of order at the end there. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Definitely live at 2 p.m. Might be live before or after. I'm just going to double check to see what's on committee. So cheers, guys. Have a good rest of your evening.